just a couple seconds for people to get settled. You'll notice that you're muted when you come on the call. That's just because there's a lot of people on the call, just to avoid any distractions. There will be time for discussion and Q&A at the end. Um, all right, welcome to our Montessori Thrive Parenting series. We host these twice a year as just a free resource for Montessori parents or parents that are just generally interested in Montessori. And we like to cover a wide range of topics. All of these calls are also recorded and they'll be available to watch from tomorrow on the same registration page that you signed up for. So if you want the recording or you want to reference it, you can check there. Today, we are joined by Christine Lowry. She's going to be talking about a very important topic, which is Montessori and neurodiversity and how they can work together and support every child. I'll go ahead and hand it over to her, but before I do, just to note, you can drop any comments, questions, or chats in the chat. I'll keep an eye on that, and we can always address them in the Q&A at the end of the call. All right, Christine.
Wonderful. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with you. Just a teeny bit about why am I talking about this? I am Montessori credentialed and have worked in Montessori classrooms for years and years and years and years and years. I also have 2 graduate degrees in special education. So the work that I do now is consulting with schools, coaching educators, sometimes working with families, but it's kind of bridging that Montessori and understanding Montessori education and how a Montessori classroom usually works with we've got learners who have this wide range of differences perhaps in how they learn and what we see in the classroom and how we can support those students. So I'm going to share my screen. I have not a too involved PowerPoint for you, but please do put any questions that you have in the chat, and we will definitely get to those in the last section here. So, neurodiversity in Montessori education. Let's see here. Okay, so I think what parents want to know is Montessori a good fit for my child? So if you're looking for a school and your child has not yet been in school, and you've got a child who, maybe learns in a different way than some other children, or has some sensory issues, or whatever might be going on, and you're wondering about what would be a good group experience for my student, would Montessori be a fit? So what I want you to really understand from this is that Montessori classrooms actually are inclusive by nature. So when we're talking about inclusive classrooms and inclusive education, what we're talking about is that this wide range of variety in learners is just a normal difference in humans, and every child is respected for who they are, every child is accepted for who they are, and in inclusive classrooms, the goal is that every child have full access to everything that goes on in the classroom, every child be able to fully participate in everything that happens in the classroom, and that happens because we're offering the support that each child needs in the classroom. Whether a child has been identified as neurodiverse or not is really doesn't limit the support that every child deserves. Now, that support might look different. So in an inclusive classroom, we talk about equity rather than equal. And that's a real key difference. We're not talking about what's fair and everyone gets the same thing, because not everybody is the same. And so in a Montessori classroom, we're really looking at, well, what does this student need? What does this one need? What does this one need? So what we have learned about inclusive education, because it's been studied for a long time now, is that when teachers incorporate some of these evidence-based practices that we know support inclusive classrooms, that everyone, all students, increase in their academic skills, in their social skills, in their emotional skills. And one of the most beautiful things about it I feel, is that everybody feels like they belong. Everybody is an important part of the community, and everybody has something to offer to the community. And so every child can thrive in that Montessori community. So, some things about the Montessori environment that are really helpful for many students today. Our neurodiverse students, our students that have sensory processing differences, students who just have a variety of ways that they perceive the world and maybe that they think differently about the world. But in a Montessori classroom, it's a very specially prepared environment. By design, it is meant to be simple. It's meant to be um, not have a lot of visual clutter. You see in this photograph that some of the walls are bare, that there's a neutral color, that the shelves are low and easily accessed with the activities, a lot of hands-on multi-sensory activities at every level, particularly toddler, early childhood, and lower elementary. But throughout Montessori, we know that children learn through interacting with materials and using their hands. One of the things that I really love about Montessori classrooms, particularly in this time, is that this high degree of sensory needs that our students have, sensory challenges that our children have. A Montessori classroom that is set up intentionally really creates this mood of calm, creates this mood of being peaceful because it doesn't have as much visual or auditory stimulation as we might think that young children need, but they really don't. They really do thrive better in an environment where there's room to move, where they're not bombarded by a lot of visual or auditory input. Um, and they they learn together in multi-age classrooms. So one of the beautiful things about a Montessori classroom is that we have a 3-year age span. So in early childhood classroom, we have 3, 4, 5s, and some children who are turning 6. The advantage for you is that you get to form a close relationship with that classroom teacher that your child is going to have for 3 years. And your child has this very close, supportive relationship with that teacher who really gets to know your child, how your child learns best, what opportunities are going to be most valuable for your child. And the children get to learn how to work with different ages. When we think about it, how many of us have friends who are exact same age as us? We don't. We have friends who are younger. We have friends who are older. We have a variety of friendships. When we expose our children to that, they are really learning a lot of social skills. They're learning how to get along with people at different levels. And we know that every child um, really develops at their own pace, and they develop in their own pace in each one of the developmental areas. So we might have a child who um, has amazing gross motor skills, is a great climber and loves to run, and maybe is really enjoys playing soccer at a young age. And that's really their superpower right now. And then we have another child that might really be drawn to the language area. And so in a Montessori classroom, we observe those areas and those areas of strength. And rather than pushing a child in certain areas, we wait for that teachable moment because we know that people learn best when they're interested, when they're ready to learn a particular thing, and that thing is meaningful. So, what we find in Montessori classrooms is that generally students excel academically, but it's not because we're pushing them academically. It's because we're observing what they're interested in when they're interested in it, and then we can be there to follow what we are seeing. So when we talk about Montessori learning, there are curriculum areas in the classroom. There are in the early childhood classroom, there's something called practical life. That is really practical life is um, it's that, it's learning skills of daily living, basically. But it also is an opportunity for our students to develop eye-hand coordination, to learn how to follow a sequence in a particular order. It's developing executive functioning skills as they're problem solving. So we have that. We have the sensorial area. You'll notice on the top shelf here, those blue shapes. Those are called geometric solids. When we're teaching geometry actually to very young children because they get to feel it, they get to hold those. And so when they are feeling a cube, for example, they feel each side of the cube, they feel the corners of that cube, they internalize what that means in a very, very different way than even seeing a 3D picture in a book or on a worksheet. Each child learns at their own pace. And each one can feel successful because we are following their lead in their learning. So they're always feeling confident. They're always feeling successful with their learning. Rather, we don't want them to feel frustrated, right? These materials that we have in a Montessori classroom isolate a particular skill or a particular concept. What we have found and what Dr. Montessori observed in creating a lot of these materials was that children learn much better when they have the opportunity to really work on one particular kind of skill or one particular kind of idea at a time in a way that involves their hands. So they have these manipulative materials, but instead of exposing them to a lot of different ideas at one time, and those ideas might get confusing, we're introducing them to one idea, one skill at a time, and they really get to very deeply concentrate and absorb their thinking in that skill. Many of these materials are also self-correcting. So what we want our children to learn in a Montessori classroom is that we learn from mistakes. We all learn from mistakes. As adults, we still learn from mistakes, and that's just part of learning. So again, it's a way of really encouraging very positive self-esteem, very positive self-concept for our students because they can engage in an activity and then built into that activity, many of them, not all of them, but many of them, is a way that they can kind of check their own work, if you will, and correct their own mistakes. So now they're learning, oh, this is where, oh, I see. Okay, I understand now that where that went wrong. And then the next time they go to do it, they're going to recall that. And that success is just a success loop that happens all of the time. Children in a Montessori classroom are really working on independence. Dr. Montessori talked about what she called human tendencies. And those human tendencies are these things that naturally all human beings want. And one of those that's really very, very important is independence. We all want to progress towards feeling really good about what we're doing, about being able to do things for ourselves. And so in this prepared environment, we have what we call freedom with structure. So there's myths about Montessori. One of those myths is that, oh, Montessori, that's where they let children do whatever they want, whenever they want. That's not true. The other myth is, oh, Montessori is so rigid. Children have to do things exactly the right way. Well, that isn't true either. But we do have very clear boundaries. Children know what the behavior goals are in the classroom. They are learning over time how to get along with one another in the classroom. We call it grace and courtesy lessons that they learn. And they are learning with these boundaries that are taught and they are guided with those boundaries that they can internalize those boundaries and to develop self-management. And many families that have had their children in Montessori for a year or two, or maybe even 3, are amazed at the things that their children can do at home, but the ways that their children can solve problems on their own, the way that their children want to do for themselves. They're getting the skills of making good decisions. And the earlier that students can learn how to do this, and it happens very naturally, it's not that we're guiding them in what decision they should make. We're helping them understand what the boundaries are for sure. But they get to make a choice of what activity they want to work on and how long they want to work with it. The structure with that is when you're done working with an activity, you make it ready for the next child in your class and you put it back on the shelf where it goes. Everything has a place where it goes so that we all know where to find things. There's structure for how we play and work with our friends. And these grace and courtesy lessons are ways that we get along in a community of children. And again, when adults come in to observe, oftentimes they're just amazed. How are these young children able to get along with one another in such a peaceful way? I see that they're helping each other. They're just naturally supporting each other. You didn't tell them what to do. They just know to do that because it's the kind of environment that we're creating for them, whether they're neurodiverse or not. So you can get the idea that, I don't know anything about any of you or any of your children, but maybe you have an autistic child. And maybe for your child, um, making friends is difficult. Maybe learning how to initiate a friendship is difficult because for many autistic children, that reciprocal partnership and that social interaction can be challenging. In a Montessori classroom, that will happen more naturally. One, because your child is absolutely accepted for who they are, and it's understood that some children um, are they want to interact, but maybe they don't know how to get that interaction started. So another child might notice that your child is watching, wants to be a part of something, and might go over to your child and say, "Come, you can come work with me." I've seen it happen many, many times. Okay. So we do teach some skills in how we manage ourselves and how we get along with each other. And again, these grace and courtesy lessons that I've mentioned. So if you're a parent who's trying to decide, do I really, would this work for my child? The first thing that you can do is to start with a tour. Many, many Montessori schools will give a group tour and they'll walk you through the school and maybe they'll walk you through some classrooms and you'll get an idea of what it looks like and get an idea of how it feels, what the tone of the classroom is. Um, does it feel peaceful and calm, busy? Children are working, children are interacting, or does it feel more chaotic? And for many of our students that have sensory issues, for instance, and again, talking about autistic children, most autistic children have sensory challenges as well. And so, um, if getting a sense of the feel, the climate of the classroom is going to be really important for you making a decision about whether this is going to be a good fit for your child or not. Noticing how the children are interacting with one another, noticing how the children are working together. Do they seem to be working together in a cooperative way, where there's maybe more cooperation and more support and working with one another rather than competitive kind of work? Are you noticing that children are taking turns with the activities rather than maybe grabbing a material from somebody? That, particularly this time of year, that doesn't tend to happen. I mean, when children are first getting adjusted to it, and they're still children, they're learning. Okay. But that observation that you do and that sense that you get, oh, I think my child would be happy here. I think I would be happy that my child is here, right? Your feelings matter too. The next thing that you want to do, particularly if your child has been identified with a particular kind of neurodiversity, is ask to have a conversation with the leader of the school Or maybe even ask if you could have a conversation with a teacher at the level that your child would be entering the school and share some of the needs that your child has. Ask them about, how do you support a child that has the needs that my child has? What are some of the things that you would do to help my child feel accepted? What are some of the things that you would do to offer my child maybe some supports that are unique to my child? Is that something that you will be able to provide for my child when they're with you? You need to feel comfortable asking all of the questions that you have and sharing as open and honestly as you feel comfortable doing about your child, about your family. The more that you can have that kind of conversation without the fear of being rejected for that, that's an important piece of it. If you get the sense that maybe there's some discomfort with that, then maybe that's not the right school for you. There's lots and lots of Montessori schools that you can go to. But it's important that you get all of your questions answered because this is a big decision. It means that you have to have at least some initial level of trust that these people that you're meeting, these people that you're talking to, these people that you're here talking to you about how they could support your child is somebody that you're going to be able to trust. All of us who are parents know that love that you have for your child is a different kind of love. Been at home with you, and this is going to be your child's first school experience. You want to feel good about that. So that is um, what I have to share. So I would love to hear your questions. I think one of the best ways of learning is to hear questions. What kind of concerns might you have? And what else do you want to know about Montessori schools and the fit with neurodiversity? I'm going to stop sharing.
Feel free to unmute yourself, or you could drop questions in the chat as well.
I know that was a lot, and it takes a little bit to process um, some of what you've heard. Um, I'm curious. I don't think we can quickly put together a poll, but I'm curious. We have a good number of people on the call. I'm curious why you wanted to participate in this call tonight. What were you hoping to find out? What were your goals? And that would be something that could be important for us to talk about now. Oftentimes,
Hi,
oh,
Christine. Good night. How are you? I'm
hi.
Carmen. I am being
Hi, Carmen.
part of a Montessori community for about 4 years now. Uh,
Uh-huh.
my two little ones are on the spectrum. One is nonverbal, he's the younger, and the oldest, she's the positive, social, talkative. However, even though we have loved to be part of Montessori, one of the main questions that I do have is like, does the Montessori community support in anyhow, those um, leads in the classroom to kind of like navigate the way that our kids with autism learn? Because usually when we see a classroom Montessori is one need for about 20 kiddos, and sometimes kids on the spectrum will need a little extra support. Any resources that we can have some guidance?
As a teacher or as a parent?
I believe both, because what I have seen, it's doing tours and visiting schools because we really
Mm-hmm.
wanted to continue Montessori environment. Sometimes you get rejected because they feel like, oh, a kiddo that do not talk yet, we don't know if it's going to, function in a Montessori classroom. So that's one of the questions that one of the, I would say, challenge that we face usually when you have a kiddo that is nonverbal.
And I do think, Carmen, that there are some Montessori schools and some Montessori teachers who maybe haven't had a lot of experience with a student that needs different kinds of supports, and that and it's really maybe their fear or their lack of confidence in their ability to support your child. And so that's where I think that the parent partnership piece of this can be really, really important, because you parents are your child's first teacher. You know your child in a way that we'll never know your child, right? We're with them for 6 hours a day, but you're with them more than that. And you get to know them in a different way than we do. And so I think that open, honest partnership is really incredibly helpful in Montessori teachers being willing to learn from parents, and having that interaction where if a teacher is reluctant, that maybe you can offer some suggestions or things that that teacher could try to support
Okay.
your child. How does that sound?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Like I said, my daughter has a free experience in a Montessori environment. And so far, she has thrived there, I believe, and she has gained so much. And I think that will make her to succeed, in other areas. And with my other little one, it's more challenging. But of course, we have to, continue to support, I think, more our community and see how we can teach around, how they learn and how they kind of like process information in order to meet some goals. But thank
Uh-huh.
you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I mean, for all children, we really want to um, keep in mind that everybody learns in their own way and at their own pace. Dr. Montessori was very, very aware with that, and designed a system of education that could be responsive to a variety of needs. So in a Montessori classroom, there might be 24 children, and they might be doing 24 different things. They might not. There may be children who are working together as well, but it's different than being in a classroom where everybody's at, okay, well now it's painting time, so we're all going to paint. That would not happen in a Montessori classroom. There would be much more opportunity for a child to make a choice, but each child learns at their own pace. And so I think as parents too, we have to keep in mind, the things that my child can do today are the things they can do today. But what they might be able to do next week, we'll see. We'll delight in seeing how they change over time. So, other questions? Other thoughts?
We have a couple here in the chat. We have
Uh-huh.
one that is asking, what would you say to someone who says that Montessori just means every child gets a trophy?
I would say that's not true. Um, I mean, if you literally mean a trophy, I know that there are some soccer clubs for children that do that, and everybody gets a medal. What everybody gets in Montessori is what they need to be successful. We don't, Dr. Montessori taught that we don't praise children. And what she meant by that is, we don't give artificial praise. We don't give equal praise to everybody. What we do is we give feedback, we give encouragement, we give acknowledgments to children. But do you want to talk a little bit more about that? I know you put that in the chat. If you wanted to add a little bit more in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute and share. I might not be understanding exactly what it is you're wondering about.
Hey, yeah, I had just asked because I'm new to Montessori, but my friend, I was telling him I just enrolled my oldest son, and I was really excited about the school and everything that Montessori stands for. And then he was like, "Well, I heard that Montessori just means that every child just gets a trophy." And I was like, "Oh, I mean, I don't think that's true, but I just wanted to know what you might say to like a naysayer or someone that might believe that."
I would probably say to someone that said that or believed that, I would probably start with a question and say, "Oh, have you ever observed in a Montessori classroom? I'm wondering where you got that idea that everybody gets a trophy, or maybe you could tell me a little bit more about that."
Yeah,
It's
it's very
not,
true.
Angelina, it's not true because you have a child in Montessori. Um, I think what it means is that every child can thrive and every child can be successful.
Definitely. I just think just I meant like maybe for people that don't understand and they're not aware of what it is, or it might just be, you know.
Ex- Absolutely. And a lot of people don't really understand what Montessori is. And, I mean, I've even heard like comedians make jokes about Montessori. There are things that just aren't true. And I always think, yeah, they probably have never seen a Montessori school.
Definitely not. But thank you. Yeah, I wasn't saying that. I wanted to ask because
Right.
he said it and but thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Thank you for the question.
You're welcome.
And thank you for passing on the truth about Montessori.
Yes, yes. I'm very excited about it. So excited. Thank you.
Good. Yeah. Excellent.
We have another question here in the chat. My preschooler started this year. He has CAS, childhood apraxia of speech. The school is not allowing AAC. This seems counter to inclusivity and the equity mission. Does anyone have ideas on how I can help facilitate a change to this restriction? They accepted him knowing he had an AAC. His speech therapist is spoken to teach 3 times, personally trying to help his teacher understand the importance of the device to his communication and inclusivity.
Have you
I'm
spoken
sorry
with the
to
head of
hear.
school? Sorry,
Yeah,
Christine.
I'm sorry that you're having that problem. Yes, and Cheryl has a good question. Have you spoken with the head of school about that? If your child's SLP is recommending that they have assisted communication, then it's kind of like, does your child have an individual family service plan by any chance? And is that written into that individual family service plan?
Yes, he has an
Okay,
IEP.
here's an IEP. Okay, well, private schools are obligated to follow an IEP by federal law. I mean, not that you want to necessarily go there, but I think Cheryl has a good idea. It's talking with the head of school and helping them understand that this is, for now, maybe not forever, but this is for now, is how your child communicates with other people. And isn't it incredibly wonderful that we have this kind of technology? Because every human being wants to connect with other people. Every human being wants to communicate with other people. And your child is no different from that. It's just that they're communicating in a different kind of way. So I guess one of the things I would wonder about is, has the SLP spoken with the teacher? And could you facilitate a meeting with you and the SLP and the teacher? Because it may be, okay, they think it's a distraction. I think if the teacher could understand exactly what it means and how to support it, oftentimes when teachers or anybody for that matter are resistant, um, it's because they're fearful, and they're fearful that they don't know how to do what needs to be done. And so it might be that the teacher doesn't understand how um, to support your child in using that technology. And if she had a lesson with the SLP and with you, then her comfort level could be greater. But the other thing, I mean, is the head of school also resistant to it? To letting your son use what he needs to be able to communicate with other people?
So far.
Okay. So Chris, you might want to think about looking at a different school. I mean, I hate to say that because that's a whole other um, path that you would be on. Um, but that it really is not, it's not okay. First of all, it's absolutely not okay. And he's already making friends. Would they be willing to meet with your SLP? Do you think?
I'm gonna ask. I hadn't actually considered that before, but I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, I think that might be a good idea. At least it would be a starting point. I suspect, when there's certain things that people say that really, if you look a little bit deeper, there's a feeling behind it. And the fact that it would be distracting says to me that this is a teacher who doesn't quite yet understand the difference between equal and equitable. And if she could understand that, and she could understand more about the technology that your child is using, then perhaps she would see that not only is it not a distraction, but it could be something that other children would be really interested in as well. And it would be a way of yet another way for your child to make friends with other children. Children are naturally curious. Children are naturally compassionate. And I would try that first, see if you can get them to meet, and you be there too.
Yeah, that's
because
really good.
Yeah,
Definitely
it should not be happening. And particularly if your child has an IEP and it's written into their IEP. That private schools, whether they're Montessori or not, are obligated to provide accommodations or supports that are written into an IEP.
That was really helpful because that was one of my concerns. I suspected that was the case, but I wasn't 100%. So I had a little difficulty pushing back as hard as I want to.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you for being an advocate for your child, and thank you for making sure that he gets the support that he needs, because I'm sure he's a wonderful child and he wants to communicate like anybody else, and different people communicate in different ways.
Thanks for your input.
Yeah. Yeah. Best of luck.
Any other questions?
I'm curious if there are other Montessori teachers in the meeting this evening.
I got both.
Cheryl, I know you're in Montessori.
I think mostly parents.
And you
I
can be
recognize
a
some other
parent and a
educators.
Montessori teacher.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Oh, here, Maria's
be both.
here.
Uh-huh. Okay, we've got
Oh,
some
Rupali,
educators.
hi.
We've got some educators here. I wonder if, Margaret O'Shaughnessy, hey. I'm wondering if some of you have questions that you would like to ask about how can we support children with neurodiverse needs in our classrooms. I know this is specifically to parents, but as educators, part of our work is partnering with parents and supporting parents, and then we support their children. So
that I've found, you mentioned, the having the partnership between, the parents, caregivers, and the teachers. I know that some people, for fear, like Chris or Carmen, I'm sorry, I don't know which one. I think it was Carmen, talked about being rejected. I know that there are sometimes parents, because of the fear of being rejected, they will not divulge all the things that they need to, that we need to about their kid. And
Yes.
I have been, as a teacher, I have had to be the one to say, I cannot meet that child's needs. It would not be good for that child. It would not be good for the other children. And I'm really sorry, but this isn't going to be this isn't the school. We don't have the resources that you need. And that's one of the things that really varies in all of our schools. We don't have the extra personnel, although we have built or are building a strong relationship with the city that we're in and their Department of Education and their special education department. There's a particular person who works with our school in terms of getting our kids services. But it takes a lot of work, and it really does. You got to be really clear and really honest about what's going on with your kid and what you've already recognized that they need. It's not a place to be. It's not a place to hide, to leave things out, to omit what's really going on, or what the sort of the most concerning issues might be. I tell people, I don't want to get to love your kid and then tell you to go someplace else. I don't want you to start here and be working and be trying, my damnedest to get you to where you need to be, as far as you can go, and then, get to a point where there's just no way. I hate having to do that. I would rather know everything up front, and then we make a really honest decision about what we can do, what the city or town can do, what the family can do, and whether or not we can get where we need to be for the kid.
And I appreciate that, and I appreciate that you shared that. I'm going to push back a little bit, because as a Montessorian, and yes, I have a special education background, but my work in Montessori was founding 2 inclusive schools and teaching in 2 inclusive schools. And I know so much that we can do. And I think we have to be careful about making an assumption that a child is going to need a resource that we can't provide, or that a child is not going to be able to get the supports that they need, or that we're going to need extra personnel. What that says to me is, as a Montessori community, and I'm not just, I really don't mean to just be picking on you, so I hope it doesn't come across that way. I feel like as a Montessori community, this is a big piece of learning that we can do, because the number of neurodiverse learners is increasing. And I feel like we have an obligation to learn all of the things that we already know as Montessorians. There are many, many things that we can do that we already know as Montessorians, when we kind of check back in with what Dr. Montessori taught us, and maybe reflect on some of the thoughts that we have, that may not be, it may be that we're putting obstacles in our own thinking about how we can help children. I work with many schools that have a wide range of needs. I'm
Christine,
working
but then you're a resource for them. You're a special ed resource then, and not every school has that.
I am a consultant for them. I meet with them 1 hour a week for the schools that ask me to do that. But I also teach online courses, Cheryl.
I've taken them.
I know you have. Right?
So I get it. I can't. I would have a really hard time taking on the responsibility for a kid with violent outbursts.
And there's a way that we can work with that to prevent that from happening.
But I don't want to accept that child until we have that in place.
Okay. All right. So that's legitimate. So
what I'm saying.
Right. Okay. So as a community, I think that we have to acknowledge that these are the children that we need to be able to serve, and how can we prepare ourselves to do that, and what kind of learning do we need to engage in to do that. And I also, just Montessorian to Montessorian, I think that's one of the things that our teacher education programs need to look at as well. How
Oh,
are we
gosh, yeah.
preparing new teachers to work with, I lovingly call it, today's children? So thank you for bringing that up, Cheryl. And I suspect it took some courage on your part to do that. And I'm glad that we could kind of engage with that. And maybe I'll see you in one of my courses.
Again.
Yeah, again. Yeah, another one. Yeah. Carmen, did you want to add something? It looked like you were unmuted for a moment.
I feel like I have something to say, and it's more about I think many parents can join the class because having this maybe facing these challenges around, and like you mentioned right now, neurodiversity community is there and it's more common that we have seen. And I have the bless that we have been part of a neuro community where my child was accepted and respected. And I can say that that's been a big thing for our family because Montessori is just not a method of education, it's more about a way of living. So I have met with every therapist and doctor, and they says to me, Montessori is never going to work for your kiddo because he's autistic. So, and I says, why? That's my first question. And I understand that they don't understand what it means to be part of a Montessori community. So just by observations, kids are learning and they push themselves to continue growing. And I see that in my kids. I think the strength that we have is that independence, the natural curiosity to continue learning. And I think that's a huge step for our society and our community. And I hope that more Montessori schools can embrace this approach and our family as well, because it's very challenging. It's very challenging.
It is very challenging. Yes, absolutely. And I 100% agree with you that the Montessori community has to embrace this learning, because there are more and more and more schools who are realizing that these are the children that they're going to enroll, and they want to learn, they want to do what's right by by all children, right? And when we look back at what Dr. Montessori taught and where Dr. Montessori started, I'll tell a very, very quick story because we have a little bit of time. She was a young female physician in Italy in the 1900s. I think there were maybe 2 or 3 other women who were physicians. And she visited a psychiatric hospital and went to the children's ward, where there were a group of children who had been committed to that ward for their lives, even though that they were children. Outrageous, right? I mean, so outrageous. So she was in this empty room with these children and their nurse, who had just was cleaning up from them having a meal, and the children were down on the floor playing with, well, I'm jumping ahead of the story, interacting with the crumbs, okay, with each other and pushing the crumbs around. And the nurse had the reaction of, see, these kids just can't do anything. You see what they're doing? They're still trying to get food, and they just got done eating. Dr. Montessori said to the nurse, watch them, look closely. They're trying to find something to interact with. They're trying to play. They're trying to interact with one another. It's that insight, that to me is what the lens of inclusion is really about. It's that openness to seeing that all humans need certain things. And she then started to create environments where, she basically experimenting. I mean, she was not like she was, she started off in her first school, she had toys in school, and then the children showed her that they were more interested in doing practical things. They were more interested, and they asked her to teach them how to read. And these were children that people thought just needed to be locked up for the rest of their lives. So this is where Montessori started. Right after World War II, she started something called the White Cross because there were so many children who were orphans from the war in Europe. And so she worked with this huge population of children that were experiencing trauma. This is the history. This is who we really are as Montessorians. And I think the more that Montessorians can get in touch with what our roots are, the more open we can be to this woman who was a scientist, who was an innovator, who was an advocate for women and children's health, and who was a lifelong learner. And if we can follow in her footsteps, there is so much that we already know that I don't think we think of as being valuable for a child that needs a technology to be able to communicate with other children, for instance. Okay, it's just the assumption is it's going to be disruptive, but we don't really know. So if we can get back into that place of, and this is what Dr. Montessori taught us, right? So it's happening more and more and more, and it happens with parents like you who are advocating for your child, who are saying, this is what my child needs, and let me help you, let me show you, let me partner with you. We need to partner with parents. And that's one of the ways that we can learn as a Montessori community. But we have a lot of basics, and more and more and more, I see many, many Montessori schools who are really working towards supporting all kinds of children. And, do they have all the answers? No. Do I have all the answers as a special educator and a Montessorian who's been doing this for 35 years? No. But I am open to letting a child teach me what I need to know about that child. And that's where Montessorians, many, many Montessorians are. So sorry, that was a little long-winded. We have any other last few comments? My AirPod just died, so I'm going to switch to speakers, I think. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah. All right, and I can still hear you. Yay. All right. There we go.
Any other questions? Did we get through Steffi's question here about the environment for 3 to 6-year-olds? We have a few kids that have a speech disorder. How do we train teachers to handle these kids?
A speech disorder? That's, you start by asking questions. What kind of speech disorder does a child have? Does a child have an articulation difficulty? Do they have difficulty with receptive language? They have difficulty processing what you're saying to them, not that they're not hearing it, but that they maybe don't understand the sequence of it. If you're the parent of a child that has some language difficulties like that or speech difficulties, I would strongly encourage you to connect with a speech and language therapist. That's not an area of expertise that most educators have. That's something that a speech and language pathologist could help you identify what might be going on with a child, and then work with the classroom teacher. I, over the years, had the chance to work with many, 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 many children that had a wide range of difficulties with speech and language. And I learned so much from speech and language pathologists by just having phone conversations. And them sharing with me what their goals were and how they were, the kinds of exercises and things that they were doing, and then I could follow through with that in the classroom. So I got to have this whole huge learning opportunity um, because there was a child in my classroom that had a speech difficulty. When we're all working together, we can do wonderful things.
Can I ask one question really quick?
Uh-huh.
My son, sorry, I am in the middle of doing bedtime with them, but um, he recently had a speech evaluation for speech therapy, and the evaluator recommended him to get evaluated to get an autism diagnosis, basically. And she was telling me with that she would recommend him to start ABA therapy. But I'm really I am new to the Montessori like lifestyle and the school and the community. So I'm very adamant that he stays in the Montessori program, and I think that I've seen it do like amazing things just from what I've heard and what I've read online. But what would you say if maybe someone recommended ABA over staying at a Montessori school for an autistic child? But they are doing, I mean, so far, it's only his second day, so I can't say, but he's doing well. So
So your child's making progress and thriving in the Montessori community?
I would say yes. He's sitting
Then I
down and
don't,
eating on his second day, and but the first day he would not sit down at all. So for me, that's progress.
then I don't think you need an ABA therapist.
I didn't think so either, but I just wanted to hear from the expert.
I mean,
I like to hear
well,
from
I mean, I'm
someone
not an
else.
expert about your child, but
Yes.
if you feel like your child is thriving where he is, if you feel like he's progressing where he is, there's actually a lot of controversy about ABA therapy, and if if for now your child is learning and growing and making friends and um, is happy in the Montessori classroom, that's the ideal. That's what can happen. And that's why I was talking about it's so important that you find the right fit. And it sounds like you have found that right fit. So
Yes,
congratulations.
they're really great. I'm very, very happy with the school that I found. So thank
That's
you.
that's wonderful. Yeah, I'm happy for your child.
Yeah, so hopefully he makes more progression. But I just, I wanted to hear because I have heard things about ABA as well, and I just, I'm more interested in the Montessori, but I know some people they don't know about it. So
And there's lots that you can read about ABA therapy, and in terms of learning. One of my favorite resources for autism is the Autism Self-Advocacy Network, ASAN. They have an amazing website with so much information about autism. And what I love about them is that these are autistic people who are talking about autism. And one of the things they say is nothing without, or I'm getting the quote wrong, but something like nothing about autism without us, because they experience it. They are autistic, right? They know what it means to be autistic, and so we can learn from them in ways that people who are not autistic don't have the same kind of experience, and so it's a wonderful website. If you just Google ASAN, it'll come up, and they have different tabs that you can look at, but all kinds of resources and all kind of information about autism.
ASAN, as in no.
ASAN. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I will look into that. I appreciate the resource, any resource. So it's all new to me.
Yeah, I think you'll enjoy looking around on their website.
Any other questions? All right, well, it's just the hour now. Next week, we're going to be talking about positive discipline at home. That conversation will be led by two Montessori experts who are joining us from AIM Montessori. We're really looking forward to that discussion. So if you're interested in learning how you can implement some more positive discipline into your home, definitely join us next week. Thank you so much to Christine for sharing your wisdom on this topic, answering all of our questions, and helping the parents on the call today. We really appreciate your time and the discussion on this very important topic.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, have a great rest of your night. Thank you for joining us. How can you join the next meeting? This might be easier. Before we wrap up, I'm just going to drop the link here to our parenting series. This is also where you can access the recordings as well. So there you go. You can register for all the future calls there as well. All right. Thank you so much, Christine. And thank you everyone for joining us. Have a great night.
Good night.
Bye.